Unmute. Okay, everybody, thank you very much, Carmen, for that wonderful introduction to this session. Mine's going to be a mild and simple introduction to the more sophisticated talks that follow, because what I'm basically going to be talking about is community service. Community service in terms of the hash research platform that we're providing the
Quentin?
Community. Yeah.
Quentin, do you want to enter in the presentation in the slideshow, or you want to give it like this?
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, much better. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. It's just that with my double laptop and screen, I can't see the videos if I do this, but never mind, doesn't matter, I'll just talk through it. So HASH stands for Hong Kong AAO Strasbourg H Alpha Planetary Nebulae Database, and this is a presentation based on work from myself and Dr. Andreas Ritter, who's the Laboratory for Space Research postdoc I've employed to look after, curate, and manage the HASH database, as well as do some research. I'm dedicating this talk to somebody who was a wonderful human being called Ms. Danica Draskovic, who sadly died of breast cancer a few months ago. And she was a PhD student of mine for many years that kept having to start and stop as she tried to work through her illness and overcome it, but sadly that wasn't possible. So I just want to dedicate this talk to her, and that's a picture of her at the bottom right-hand corner. What a wonderful, wonderful human being, and a sad loss to many of us. Anyway, who am I? Many of you may know me. The younger generation probably never heard of me. I'm in charge of the Hong Kong University Late Stage Cell Evolution Research Group. That's photographs of us all. You will notice a picture of Albert Zylstra in there next to me. He's actually a distinguished visiting professor here at Hong Kong U, appointed for 5 years, and he comes out 2 months a year pre-COVID to work with us in our group. So it's been a great privilege to have Albert joining us until quite recently with the problems of COVID, and have Andreas Ritter, who's next to Albert, looking after the HASH database, and then my other postdocs, PhD students, MPhil, and other people. Okay. So these are the current problems in PN research that we see where we believe this service, this community service of providing a HASH platform, can help. We got to recall that until the advent of MASH and then HASH, all previous catalogues tended to be rather biased. They weren't really representative of the true underlying population of this amazing phenomena, and incomplete. Also, a lot of the previous catalogues contained quite a significant number of various kinds of contaminants that weren't recognized at the time, but are now, following well-established procedures to root them out. The issue of morphology of these objects and what it actually means, whether it's projected morphology on the sky or the inherent morphology as a 3D object, and what it actually means, is something that has been taxing many of us, especially in the asymmetric planetary nebulae community. How this is related to the evolutionary state of the object, expansion velocity, its surface brightness, etc. Properties like the excitation, depending on the central star properties, the abundances that you see in the gas, and detectability in presence of recombination halos or asymptotic giant branch halos around these objects is interesting. Course distances mean that if you get an accurate distance, then you can actually measure some hard parameters. Getting accurate distances for PN has been difficult in the past. Of course, when you can see the central star, be confident that you've identified it, then Gaia can produce distances for quite a lot of PN, but not every PN. And that is because the central stars are incredibly, they're not very bright at all. They're not very luminous due to their size, and etc., as white dwarfs. Or on the way to white dwarf. So things like the surface brightness radius relationship established by my previous postdoc, Dr. David Frew, and myself and Ivan Bojicic helped in that regard. So anyway, the problem of contaminants, as I mentioned, has been a serious one. And we in the HASH team have been holistically assessing every PN candidate by a whole variety of properties to try to weed them out. And the availability of new wide field surveys of better sensitivity and higher angular resolution in the multi-wavelength sense has really helped us to discriminate, as has the arrival of decent spectroscopy for many of our PN candidates now. So here's an example of, in the HASH database, of 596 H2 regions that we have now. Many of these have been previously identified as PN in the past, And our new data, especially mid-infrared, that shows more of the environmental influences, have enabled us to weed these objects out. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the role the amateurs are now playing in our field, and how a significant number of amateur discoveries are now ingested into hash in the last few years in particular. Here's a couple of beautiful examples. Strotner-Drechsler 56 and Strotner-Drechsler 9 of what I call stratified planetary nebulae in the terms of the quality of the very deep narrowband imaging by adding up hours and hours and hours of exposure to produce images such as this. Here's a few more examples from Peter Goodhue, who's been taking nice images of faint PN, and you can see the faint blue stars in many of these. And in fact, many of these new discoveries at higher latitudes tend to be of the more round or just even slightly oval kind. And you can, there's a web link there to his pages, and you see a beautiful selection of very deep and gorgeous images of planetary nebulae, better than most of the professional images for some of these objects, I would add. So apart from the hash database, there's now something called planetarinebulae.net, which is the French amateur group that are doing this for the entire global amateur community, have put together a very nice database that contains all the discoveries that they've made and all the spectroscopic follow-up they're also making. And there's again some examples of some of the deep images of those PN on the right-hand side. They're getting in on the act spectroscopically too now, not just in terms of very deep imagery. They've set up their own two-spot spectroscopic system in Chile, a very good site, a modest camera, but enough to, with dedicated and long exposures, to get reasonable emission line spectra for some of the high surface brightness new candidates to confirm them. So that's another additional supplement to what the professionals are achieving. So here is the current and past major compilations. We've seen this slide before in a previous talk, but at the bottom now, I'm just saying 2021, there are now 4,632 true, likely, and possible planetary nebulae in the HASH research platform. That's the distribution on the sky. And again, I've highlighted in yellow with the larger symbols, the contributions that the deep sky hunters and French consortia of amateurs are starting to make. And you will see that a lot of them are high galactic latitude and a bit more out of the plane than the ones we found in the new narrowband H-alpha surveys such as SHS, VFAS+, and IFAS. So let's talk a little bit now about the hash database. This is a page from the hash database for NGC40, and you can see a variety of images are available. You can click on the tabs to download spectra, and then there's this area here where you can see PNIC, PanSTARS, HST, ICON, etc. These are all the federated databases and servers where we can access directly from a click to that particular planetary nebulae that's on display there in that image. Now, the web traffic for HASH has been increasing quite a lot over the last couple of years. You can see, obviously, in Hong Kong, we've got high, low, because we're the ones that are managing it and updating it on a daily basis. But we're now serving over 460 users around the world in, I think it's now 62 different countries with over 250 institutional affiliations. So that's the level of interest and activity that we have now with a HASH database globally. And what the basic content of HASH is, as I said, we're federating and consolidating all known galactic and LMC, SMC, PN. We're updating and correcting their coordinates. We're improving the status, removing contaminants, improving every estimate, in fact, of every property that we can measure with all the new databases and wavelength multivariate images that are becoming available. And this is an ongoing and it's a time-consuming process. We're going through a very major overhaul at the moment. But here's an example that's still there in the literature. PBOS29 still has the incorrect PN identified. And the correct one is, as I've arrowed here, the one in Simbad is that star to the top right there. And so it's really getting urgent now that we need to transfer our hash IDs into Simbad CDS. And I'm in touch with Mark Allen at the CDS to try to speed up this process. But anyway, that's just a summary again of, you can see there just that when you click on the spectral tab, you get spectra, and this is from Grantican observations of Laurent Sabine and I on our program with a few other collaborators to follow up on PN, and we get very decent spectra, of course. And this one has a central star identified too, and you can see some of the multi-WEMIC images there, and the number of PNs we have in total within the galaxy and within the Magellanic Clouds, currently within HASH. Now, the HASH database itself is stored in a MySQL relational database. It contains FITS cutouts and RGB cubes and images created using Python mainly. It's front-end built using HTML, PHP, and JavaScript, and data are linked to most useful and relevant online resources, such as those there. Anybody that wants to access HASH, it's freely available to anyone, even members of the public. They can just request a login. It's login basically.
2 minutes. Quentin, 2 minutes.
Yep. 2 minutes, thank you very much. Okay, and so there we go. So it's structured like this, and I won't need to go into the detail for this now. Just to show you that since APN 7, we've gone from 9,200 when we had APN 7 in Hong Kong, 9,200 planetary nebulae and other catalogued objects up to 11,390 today. Key point here, 1,063 central stars have now been identified, and we've added 338 new central stars in 2021. In fact, I'll find another one today, which I'm going to add a little bit later. But we are undergoing major overhaul work at the moment. So quickly, this is distribution of true, likely, and possible planetary nebulae. This is where the PN have come from. You can see that new HASH, MASH, and IFAS, all together, we've contributed nearly 40% of the total numbers of PN currently known. Again, this is just a distribution amongst the morphological types, and again, a breakdown by origin for the PN that we have in HASH. Note there are 669 what we call round PN. Here are some round PN. There's a lot of them. You can often see the central star in many of them. Some of these round PN may actually be bipolar C and polon, but statistically that number is low. There might be another one here, but they're just large numbers of round PN in HASH, and they're not that rare. We've been looking now at the radial velocities, and this is the first map of radial velocities produced from the HASH catalog using 675 PN, for which we have high dispersion data. We've looked at central stars. There's the old Weidmann catalog, and in fact, 45% of Weidmann's objects are not PN, according to HASH. There are all sorts of different kinds of contaminants. That's to bear in mind when you use these old catalogs. And why not? And there's various reasons why not. Confusion, can't even see the thing, too compact to see the star, and is too confused. So lots of different reasons why. And astrometric differences have been looked at between existing catalogs and what we can do with all the federated high world coordinate system accuracy surveys now to root out these problems. So thank you very much for your attention. Last time we had the APN meeting, Noam and I produced this Galaxies referee publication. I believe we're doing that again for APN 8, so I think that's fantastic, and Galaxies has turned out to be an excellent forum for this, for our work. So same again for APN 8, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Quentin. Very impressive data.
Simple but effective.
So I can see already a hand, raised hand, Ursula.
Hi.
Hi.
Quentin,
Yes.
nice to see you. Any
Nice to see you.
plans to extend your phenomenal stamina and organization and method to other nebulae, like symbiotics is the obvious, but LBV nebulae?
I deleted a slide from my presentation that in fact contained, because if you actually look at the total numbers of objects in our database, it says 11,000 and something, and you look at the total number of PN, you say, oh, only 4,000 and something. You're saying, well, what are all the other entries? They are all those things you've just been saying. And so you can choose them in HASH and then output them, look at their images, they're exactly the same. We just need to advertise that aspect of it a little bit better. So yes, it's already federated in, but it's not complete, because these are just objects that were at once perhaps a PN or thought to be a PN, but they're a contaminant, so they go into these things. So we're not complete in those sub-catalogues. They're just objects that have been confused in the past. Thank you. Noam and Albert. Ursula, Noam and Albert all asking me questions.
Quentin, thank you for this impressive presentation, as you did in some previous APN meetings. Can you go back to the slide of the round nebulae?
Oh, yes.
Because some of what you classify round that are actually round on the outskirts. But for example, this one I can see here are, here are, so clearly it's not spherical. In other also you can identify, but in a previous slide, in one of the previous slides, you show those who are really seem smooth and really circular.
Yes, so that's a good point, and I'm glad you raised it. And I could have just put objects that just look like these, and then nobody would have said anything. But I deliberately included objects like that and objects like this to actually create a debate, because it's clear that PN can have an overall round shape, but they have quite sophisticated and complicated internal structures in some cases. Some are very smooth in some examples.
Okay, talk about the smooth. These smooth, are they higher in the galactic, higher from the galactic plane? Are they fainter also, those who are smooth?
Yes, and yes, I would say. So let's have a look at this slide here. So these like PHR 1911 and IFAS and these objects here, you can see sometimes slightly double shells and slight enhancements within an overall circular structure. But this is like, this one is a perfectly perfect example. Soap bubble, beautiful example, slightly oval, but you know, there's no way you'd be confusing that with a bipolar, for example. So yes, I mean, this is something that Jacobi found, and I mentioned in previous meetings when the deep sky hunters first started discovering PN out of the plane, and I wondered whether this was a selection effect, is that they were tuned to a significant number of round PN and faint, with a relatively small fraction of more irregular oval and bipolar shapes. So I've made note of that before, and I think there's something in it, there's something happening. We've already seen in other talks, I think at lower galactic scale heights, there's a preponderance from the higher mass progenitors that must come for them to be primarily bipolar or bipolar forms or multipolar forms.
My guess that many of them did have a companion, but substellar. So I don't know how to look for planets in these. Some planets might survive, but this is one project for the future, search planets in these circular PN.
Well, I certainly think that given that there's about 20% of hash entries appear to be like this, then I think more attention needs to be given to these, even though it's not asymmetric per se. I mean, some of them do have interesting asymmetries within their internal structures, within a beautiful circular overall envelope. So I think that's interesting to investigate, and especially when there seem to be correlations with galactic scale height and other things.
Okay, we're just a bit over time, but let's have a last very quick question, Albert.
We have a time, Carmen, we have time because we can eat from the discussion time. The spirit of these meetings is allow question and discussion and then eat from the discussion time at the end.
Well, all I have is a quick comment, Noam.
Oh, Albert, ask me a question. Come on, you know you want to.
Yeah, but then we'll still be an hour from now. I can confirm how useful the HASH database is for planetary nebula research. It's a nice overview and it is very complete. One of the things we have done is used all the images in it for deep learning to try to classify the objects. Because you have the ones that you're certain that planetary is, the ones that are likely, and the ones that may be. And so by the deep learning, we've assigned a probability to all of them, its categories and how many of them. If I'm correct for that, then the database has about 3,200 true planetary nebulae in it, in total. And I think that is a useful number to have.
Excellent, Albert. Yes, I know we've talked about this before, and I'm very interested. I have a PhD student just started with me a few months ago called Yushan Li that I've inherited, and for 2 years. And she's from a deep learning background. She was looking at applying to other amorphous blobs, but galaxies, and I've transformed her into other amorphous blobs called planetary nebulae. And so I think there's a decent collaboration there, Albert. And once COVID is over, I'll send this extremely bright young PhD student to Manchester, if I may.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Okay, Denise. Denise, you want to make your question then?
Hey, Denise, lovely to see you.
Hi, very nice to see you. Sorry that I came kind of late to your talk, so I listened to everything later on. But anyway, you quickly mentioned some problem with the temperature of the central stars, the catalog. So what's the matter there?
No, I didn't say anything about the central star temperatures actually. Just that that the central stars, significant numbers of additional central stars have been identified as part of the hash work that we're doing.
No, I'm talking about the comparison of the effective temperature in one catalog. You quickly said something about this. Perhaps there. Yes.
So here we were saying that that Weidmann's catalog, 2020 catalog, has 619 CSPN coordinates, and I got an excellent summer intern who was under a research fellowship, scholarship actually, very bright student, to look at Weidmann's catalog and compare it to the hash database. And first thing we noticed is that there are 45 objects that Weidmann think are PN, which we consider not to be PN for various regions, like their symbiotic binary stars, their ionized interstellar medium, H2 regions, or transition objects, or CVs, and things like that. And we're pretty sure of these identifications based on all our experience and holistic approach. So these are just mistakes, and these are based on, Weidmann's catalog goes back to sources from the 70s, and there's still a lot of people using out-of-date catalogs and incorrect identifications and bad positions and all the rest of it. So hash is intended to put an end to that as best we can. Nothing will be perfect. We are attempting to provide, as a service, community service, as I said, the best possible data. And of course, that keeping on top of that is a full-time task almost. But we are hoping to produce a proper refereed paper based on when I finally go through everything at least once, and I'm about a third of the way through at the moment. It's taken me 6 months because it's awful. I've got another job to do as well. I've got to do this, but hopefully within a year we'll have the first seriously updated hash database for the community.
Okay, thanks very much. This is really important because you keep using data that it's not okay, so you get conclusions that are not right because of that.
Exactly.
So,
exactly, Denise. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen. There we go.
And now we go with Javier, our colleague.